This is the Marathon Handbook Podcast, and I'm joined as always by my colleagues in Toronto, Alex Sear, representing the west end of the city and all the way over on the east end. It's Caitlin Tossi.
I'm here.
She is living in my basement right now. We flew from Chicago direct to Toronto, and it's like Caitlin is literally downstairs and I'm upstairs and we're recording the podcast now. So we're going to test the power of my internet today. You are like the people who live under the stairs. That's like a 90s horror reference. I'm not sure. Caitlin gets it. Alex is just like, I wasn't alive for that one.
Was that the Muppets?
The Muppets Take My Basement.
Didn't Harry Potter live under the stairs?
He lived in the closet, didn't he?
Interesting.
I think it was under this. Okay.
I've never seen any Harry Potter. I know nothing about Harry Potter. Harry Potter was like, I was just too old for Harry Potter. So I was like 20 when Harry Potter started.
I was too. That's exactly why I'm unsure. Someone can tell us. Someone can put it in the comments. Where did Harry Potter live in his initial home with his uncle or his aunt and uncle? Yeah.
There you go. We're off to a good start already here. This is a running podcast. I swear. Today, we're going to talk about, today, this is kind of an Alex podcast because today we're going to hand off in the second segment, the floor to Alex. You spoke with a futurist, a man who can see the future, guy named Bill Quinn, who's a futurist for TCS. TCS, of course, major sponsor of some of the biggest marathons in the world, New York, at Toronto, where the reason why we're here this week to cover the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. You spoke to Bill Quinn about the future of the marathon, the future of running, what he is seeing, what he is forecasting, what technologies we can see. Give us a little snapshot of this conversation, which we'll have in the podcast in the second half.
Yeah, it was cool. It went to places I did not expect at all. Bill is a great conversationalist. It was fun to chat with him. He gave me a little sneak peek of how marathons might look different in the future. So we talked a bit about which cities might end up hosting big major marathons and also how marathons might be better. So the current problems of today getting worse as more people are getting into the marathons, corrals being chaotic from the start. Little precursor, we're going to address a listener question exactly about that later on in this pod. Also just too many people on course, sustainability stuff, how to make all these things better in the future. So that was really cool. But also he went into some pretty cool tidbits about gear and how that may evolve. I don't want to say too much right now, but there were some talks of morphing t-shirts and also AR glasses for spectators. We talked about the running experience, the spectator experience, and also the organizing of a marathon and how that might change. So we chatted for the better part of an hour. It went super well. And I left feeling pretty excited about entering what I hope is a long marathon career that spans a couple decades so that I could see it for myself.
Yeah, so we'll have that conversation in the second half of this episode. And the reason for that, we're going to keep our chit-chat relatively brief, although it's always a challenge for us.
I was going to say, I don't think that's ever possible, but we'll try.
This first segment, we're going to take on two audience questions, and then we're going to hand it over to Alex for that interview afterwards, because we are in Toronto to do a boatload of coverage around the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. It's home turf for Alex and I, so we're super excited to be able to do this. And we're actually going to be doing a live podcast, the three of us, a live pod from the expo floor at the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. We have a date and time. We're on the schedule. There's no turning back now, gang. It's Saturday, 4 p.m. That's our slot, Saturday, 4 p.m. Come on out and listen and watch us talk, and we'll answer some questions afterwards. We'll hang around afterwards and chit-chat as well. So if you want to come out and meet with us and listen to the pod live, we are going to be there Saturday, 4 p.m. at the expo. They've got a section where they have live performance stuff. So we'll be there.
And I won't miss a flight. I'm already here.
You're already here. You won't
we won't have a repeat of Chicago.
Yeah. Caitlin will be here. She's already locked in. We're here.
Unless you get
So-
stuck and lost in traffic like yesterday.
That also
thank you,
happened.
Alex.
So
That
let's
did
not count our
happen.
chickens just yet.
Turns out Toronto is a big city. I let Caitlin drive my car, and we had a little super secret project we were working on yesterday, and
Yeah.
it required Caitlin to drive my car at one point, and she discovered that the Don Valley Parkway in Toronto is a bit hellish to navigate. Got to do a few loops.
Especially around rush hour. Yeah, it was a little tricky.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be all around Toronto all week. We're locked in. We're going to go to a couple of the pop-ups. We're going to go to a couple of the shakeouts. I know that there is the Don't Trip Mile. I believe it's on Friday night. I think we're going to attend that, which should be fun. So if you're in Toronto, keep an eye out for us. Come by and say hi. We don't bite, and we'd love to chat with you. And we should give a shout out before we pivot into these questions. Got to give a shout out to our Chicago crew, the people that came out. We did 2 pretty informal shakeouts, but they were super fun. And we had a nice group that came out both on Friday morning and Saturday morning. I'll give a particular shout out to Evan, Douglas, Yvonne, Andy, Brad, Daniel, Connor and Mark, Pa, and from the expo, Craig and Courtney from Minnesota. Awesome couple, super nice. Tracked us down in the expo, had a nice chat with them. That was really cool.
Super nice.
Yeah. So a little bit more housekeeping, guys, before we get into the questions. Looking forward, speaking of the future, we're going to be in New York, and we're going all out in New York. Got the media credentials for the whole group approved today, so it's good. It's actually happening. We are going to do, basically, we're throwing the kitchen sink at New York. We're going to do a live podcast. We're going to try to find a venue for that. We are going to do our watch along show on the Sunday during the race. We're going to do a whole bunch of social media, chat with some of the elites, and all kinds of other stuff as well. So if you're interested in connecting with us in New York and you're running New York, or you're going to be there for marathon weekend, email us at podcast@marathonhandbook.com and let us know that you're interested in, let's say, a shakeout or attending the live recording of the podcast. And we will make sure that you are kept abreast of all of our plans. And I'll create a Google forum so I can get everyone locked in and RSVP'd earlier than I did for Chicago, and we'll put a bigger effort into getting the word out as well. So subscribe to our newsletter also for that, and you'll get all of the info for New York and beyond, because we got all kinds of stuff planned for our December as well.
For the rest of the year.
For the rest of the year. Final thing. Speaking of the rest of the year, I'm running the Philadelphia Marathon. It's official.
What?
It was unofficial until
It was dicey. I
today.
know.
All right.
It's now official. I'm locked in. The good people of Philadelphia are going to host me to come and run the race. I'm super excited about it. It's one of my personal favorites, if not my personal favorite marathon. And I thought it'd be cool to do a special, like, documentary style episode of the pod where I take the recording gear on the road and I talk to some people. I'm going to talk to the race director. I'm going to talk to a couple other people that have run the race before. If you're running Philadelphia this year and you're game to chat with me about why you're running Philly, your experience, if you've ever run it before, if it's your first marathon, why you chose Philly, I'd love to chat with you about that for the podcast. And if you want to chat with me, email podcast@marathonhandbook.com. Put in the subject line like, I'm running Philly or whatever, and I'll follow up with you and we can get on the horn and talk a little bit about why you're doing Philly. And we're going to put it together into like kind of like a little bit of an experiential, maybe 30 or 40 minute episode where I take the mic with me on the road and go talk to people at the expo and at the finish line after the race and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so I'll be wearing my podcasting hat and my marathon runner hat on the weekend. I'm sure it's going to go great.
Yeah, this is a big drop. Like, I feel like you should probably include yourself in these interviews because all of a sudden you're 40 days out of a big fall marathon. So
good thing I've been running.
Yeah, good thing you've been running.
Yeah.
I'm a witness to it. I've seen Michael go out on the runs.
Caitlin has now seen the way my life. She has now peered into my existence. Although my wife has stolen Caitlin from me as a running partner. I thought I was going to get all this company all week, and Caitlin and I have not run together. And you just did a workout with my wife this morning, blasting 200s on the track at dawn. And
yeah, Kelly is keeping me in check. I mean, it has been intense, and I'm loving every second of it.
I'm jealous. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into. We got 2 questions. One is New York City Marathon related, and what happens if you get put in a corral slower than you think you can perform at, and what the heck you do in that situation, which is a great question.
Really good question. Yeah.
A scenario I've been in before, and many others have, and we've got thoughts. Don't worry, help is on the way. And then the second one is how you base build for a long period of time. If, say, your next planned marathon is next fall, that's a year away. What do you do in the interim? It's a long haul. We'll tackle both those questions right after this.
So last January, 2 weeks before the Houston Half Marathon, my coach made me do what he called the impossible workout. 30 minutes at threshold pace, followed by 1 kilometer of kicking, even faster. All of it at half marathon pace, which for me is about 4:56 per mile.
You had to slide that one in there, didn't you, sir?
My point is that running on frozen roads near my house in Toronto to do this workout sounded daunting, and going to some gym and running on a regular treadmill sounded even worse. Luckily, Michael had a Wahoo Kicker Run treadmill stashed in his home in northern Toronto, and so I took advantage of that last winter.
So that's why you kept coming over to my house all the time.
I mean, I also came for the company.
Sure.
And mainly for the Kicker Run's run-free mode, where the treadmill uses sensors to adjust its carpet speed so that it can respond to your running speed in real time. So it responds to you, and not the other way around. Now that was helpful for the workout's kick portion, so I could accelerate naturally without having to worry about pressing buttons all the time. The treadmill also comes with the lateral tilt feature, which will simulate the angles of running on a natural terrain. So every step is not the same, which is a good thing. And it's kind of like if you're running outdoors. And bonus, the Kicker Run connects with a laundry list of third-party apps, including Strava, the Wahoo Run app, and Zwift. So you can run free in Watopia.
It's quiet, simple, and effective. The treadmill follows you and not the other way around. It's available in the US, the UK, Germany, and Austria. And now you can get a free Headwind smart fan worth $319 when you order the Kicker Run from Wahoo Fitness using the promo code MHRUN. That's all one word, MHRUN. Take our word for it, as well as the professional athletes that use it, including ultra runner David Roche, triathlete Chelsea Sodero, Olympic gold medalist Cole Hawker.
And now, me!
Okay, let's get to the show. All right, and we're back. Question time. And I should say, we've been loving the questions. They're amazing.
Oh, yeah.
The mailbag is constantly, it's brimming. It runneth over with great listener, viewer questions. If you have a question, absolutely email us at any time, podcast@marathonhandbook.com. We're going to tackle questions on a regular basis each episode pretty much, but we're also going to do big quarterly mailbag questions. So if your question isn't immediately answered and, it's not an urgent question about a race that's coming up in a week or two, don't fret. We'll get to it. But if it is urgent, you can throw the old bat signal, big all caps, urgent, : whatever your question is in the subject line, and we'll try to get to it right away. Okay, first one here. Hi, MH team. I stupidly submitted a slower than expected finishing time when I registered for the New York City Marathon. I was trying to be humble, but now realize this has completely upended my plans for the race. I feel like this writer, this listener is perhaps Canadian. Trying to be humble. Humbleness. It gets you nowhere.
It gets you nowhere.
My most recent marathon PB is 3:14:53. Great time.
Nice.
And I would like to try to PB at New York City. However, I submitted an expected finishing time of 3:30 and ended up getting assigned to a later wave and corral. I had wanted to run with pacers, the 3:15 or the 3:10 finishing time pacers, and just get to focus on running and not pacing myself, but they will not be in this wave. In addition, I'm worried about a slow start and trying to figure out how to pace myself. I've heard horror stories of weaving, running extra, and expending a lot of unnecessary energy in the beginning of the race when starting with a slower wave. And I want to understand what I can do to perform my best given the unfortunate circumstances. Can you walk me through how to navigate the situation? I will be around people who are at the 3:30 expected finishing time. Thanks so much. Regards, stressed out Emily.
Oh, Emily.
Oh man, that's like reverse college. That's what we in college before track meets, we would all inflate our seat times to try to get into faster heats on the track. And I
I'm not
remember
surprised.
none of us would hit it. And sometimes our coach would refuse, and then we'd be put in heats with people who were actually slower than us because everyone else did it. That's such a pervasive problem in the world of young college men. Now, it looks like Stressed Out Emily has the opposite problem. Man, you were 3:14:53 as a PB and you went 3:30. That's excessive amounts of humility.
That's underselling yourself, Emily.
Yeah.
But we get it. A lot of people have been here before. And there usually is an opportunity to upgrade your time. Although if you enter through the lottery, I think you just submit an anticipated time and then you're locked in on that. If you qualify through time-based qualification, which you can do in New York, I think there's like a window where you can go into the portal and upgrade your time. In this case, and this sucks because if it was the faster wave, but a corral farther back, you could work your way up and hook on to those pace bunnies gradually over time. But in this case, like we looked it up before we had recorded the podcast, and wave 1 is 9:10, and then there's like
35 minutes or something before the second wave. It's a really, really big lapse of time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the same thing from wave 2 to wave 3, there's another 35 minutes. So it's 35-minute increments. So there's no way you're going to catch that pace group. So what do? I think we don't dwell on I always try to remind myself this. Only try to control what you can actually control. Yep. If you cannot control it in running, you let it go and you move on. You can't control this, Emily. So we got to move on and figure out a way to resolve this. We got to figure out a way to make it work for us, right?
Yep.
Very first thoughts. What's the first thing Emily can do you think, Caitlin?
To me, I would say just get there early and get to the absolute front of the corral of the wave at the very beginning, because I'm going to tell you a really quick story that happened to me in Boston. Now, this also was out of my control. However, maybe if I had left even earlier, even though I think it would have been excessive, it wouldn't have happened. My bus out to Hopkinton got lost. I was actually with Michael's wife. Kelly and I were on the bus, and there were people
like that.
No. So we were just trying to comfort each other on the bus and not get too stressed out about it. But the bus got lost, and we got to Hopkinton, and we had to run to our corral. And when we got to the corral, they were literally doing a 5-second countdown. 5, 4, and we were just absolutely flustered. And so I think that, okay, so continuing with that, because I want to talk about two things about that. What we had to do is and what we shouldn't have done is we did so much weaving. And to me, it tired me out excessively during the first 10K of the Boston Marathon. So I think the best way to avoid that is to get there early and get to the absolute front, because we were in the absolute back of our corral. So we were in the absolute slowest part for the wave where we were trying to get out in. So you want to at least jump all of the people that you are capable of jumping. So get in front of everyone you're capable of getting in front of. Get to the absolute front of that corral, wave, get to the front. So that's number one. So get there nice and early so you have plenty of time to do that. And just going into that about the weaving, try not to panic. And I think that's exactly what I did. I was panicking because I'm a planner, and I think Kelly is too. We are planners, and we did not like this, that this was completely, it came out of left field. It was unexpected, and we had to solve as we were going, and I didn't solve it correctly. I wish someone had given me this advice before I had this problem happen to me in Boston. So I would say, don't panic and don't waste a lot of time and energy weaving at the beginning so you don't burn out in that first 10K. So how do you do that? You just really pay attention to, well, other than getting to the front, really pay attention to where you have those spaces and where you can make those paths, and don't surge. You want to go into those, you want to go into those passes very gradually. Do not surge and go faster than your marathon pace and start sprinting off the block, because that will tire you out immediately. And then you're just gonna, you're going to be really, really frustrated with your time because you're going to be burnt out by the time you get to, kilometer 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have very little to add other than an example and also a thought. So I think, Emily, this is good advice. I actually was in your shoes 1 week ago. We were at a Nike event in Chicago, and it was this crazy relay. It's called it the Race 321. That's for Chicago's area code. 312.
Yeah.
312,
Chicago's area code. And the relay was a 3-person relay. Me running 3 kilometers, passing it off to Kosuke, our videographer, who ran 1 kilometer, who then passed it off to Michael, who ran 2K. It was a lot of fun. We placed pretty well, but the start was chaotic. I got to the line a little bit too late, and I had about 50 to 60. And yeah, your numbers might be bigger than that, but think much smaller, much narrower corral and start line. And in front of me are about 50 to 60 dudes. They were all guys who had no business being in front of me in a race. And so we start the race, and
Alex flex.
I mean,
it.
Well, that's going to
true.
that's going to be your case, Emily. There will be people ahead of you that you will pass. And what I told myself before the race was, you're going to have the instinct of making it all up in the first 300 meters. And I'm glad that I didn't do that. What I did and what helped was I tried to get near the front. Like Caitlin said, I've tried to find my paths, and then I tried to identify my contemporaries, because there were a few guys there who were looking to run as fast as I was looking to run. And it's going to be the same thing for you. Sometimes there's some advice, and I'm not sure how you are with watches and times and splits, Emily, but sometimes you'll have a coach tell you, don't worry about times and splits. I think this is one occasion where you might want to be mindful of what your first few kilometers look like, so that you can latch on to someone who probably made the same mistake as you. You're not going to be the only person in this huge amount of people who underestimated their finish time. And so try to get near the front, try to find your contemporaries, form a little group, and later on in the race, start thinking about a new challenge. Why not try to win your section?
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, listen, so there's all kinds of positives you can take from this, Emily. Like, as both of you said, I think that being very patient and being very smart in the first 5 or 10K is of the utmost importance. It's like your goal in the first 10K of this race is to not blow the next 32 kilometers in this first 10K, but also to position yourself for success. I would say this is an instance where you're going to feel like a jerk, but you got to elbow your way up to the front of the corral. You got to go all the way to the front. You should be at the very front of the wave, and you deserve to be there. It's weird to do it. I've had to do it before. I remember the first marathon I ever ran, I was like way back. It wasn't a huge race. It was here in the greater Toronto area, and it was a mid-sized race. But I thought to myself, like, it's my first marathon. why would I be at the front of this race? You know, I'm not going to win this race. Why would I be at the front of this race? And I was like way back, 4 or 5 deep back. And the horn goes and everyone takes off, and it's chaos for the first couple of kilometers. And then quickly everyone starts kind of shooting backwards on you. You're hitting your pace and you realize like, oh, this is where I should be. I finished 6th in the entire marathon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I should have been at the front. In the second race I ran, my teammates that I train with, my club mates, were like, get up to the front. It's the same group of people. It's weird to, it's like you have like imposter syndrome when you go to the front, right?
Yep,
But
totally.
in this case, Emily, go to the front. Be polite, weave your way through. You're going to see other people doing it. Do it yourself. Be assertive. Get to the front of the entire group, which is kind of cool because you'll be right at the front. But put yourself there because you deserve to be there. Get as far to the front as you can. You may not be able to get all the way to the front because there's going to be thousands of people in front of you, but try to get as far as in the front as you can. And then that first 5K, this is going to sound crazy. Don't worry about your pace in the first 5K. Don't worry about it unless you're running too fast. Then tamp it down. You will be fine over time. Of course, if you're like running 5-minute, 30-second kilometers behind a big group of people, you might want to pull out to the side and get ahead of them. But just get settled, stay calm, be confident, get your breathing regulated, work your way through the crowd. It's going to start opening up after a few kilometers. Once you get into Brooklyn, over the bridge, get off Staten Island, it's going to start to open up. Another final tip for you, make sure you stay warm in Staten Island before the start of the race. It's a long wait, so bring a lot of throwaway clothes, bring something to sit on. I was teased for suggesting in the live podcast we did in Chicago over the weekend that it would be silly to bring a little chair. I think it's a brilliant idea, and you'll see other people in New York doing it. A little chair or something to sit on, even a piece of cardboard, something to get off the cold ground so that you stay as warm as possible before the start of that race so that you're ready to go when you get to that start line. All
And
right.
standing for that much time beforehand is just exhausting, especially if we're telling, Emily, if we're saying, okay, get there really early, then that means you're going to have to wait around a lot more. And that was another issue in Boston. All the standing, the hours and hours in Boston, standing before getting on the bus. I didn't have to stand afterward, clearly, because I ran off the bus and ran to the corral and started the race. But all the standing before can be really exhausting. And one more final thing that I wanted to mention. Now, instead of doing what Alex and all of his friends did in college about saying that they were going to be running much faster, doing the opposite there, you are going to be passing at your normal pace, not pushing it. You're going to be passing people. Okay. So at some point during the race, you're going to be, you could be passing people, or if you're not 100%, like Michael's saying, at the front of the corral, you're going to be passing people, and you kind of gamify that when that happens.
Yeah.
So you don't do it like you don't sprint past these people, because just at your natural pace, if you end up seeing people ahead of you and you're passing them, it's a lot nicer than having people pass you. So I always kind of think of that when I'm in the second half of my race. I think like, oh, okay, I see that person up ahead. Yep, I think I'm gaining on them. All right, I'm going to pass them. So I sort of gamify the second half of the race if I can, if I'm in a strong position. And that's a really nice way to motivate yourself and to distract yourself and to just have a fun time and to feel really good about yourself. So, I mean, good luck. I hope that you're able to reach your goal and that you're able to finagle your way to the front as much as possible and just have a really good race. But most importantly, because you signed your email stressed out, Emily, don't feel stressed. Try to relax a little bit at the race and have a really good time, and try not to let that get to you too much, because you can't control the mistake that you made with the corral. So just go in there, follow our tips. And I think maybe, Michael, if we want to give her some tips on pacing, because she said that she wanted to follow the pace bunnies. And since there's not going to be any pace bunnies, you may need to think about adjusting your plan, because perhaps you were just going to follow the pace team. So you are going to want to make sure that you know roughly where you're supposed to be with how much time once you get past like that first section of the race, if you really are very strict about your time goal. So now you will have to pay attention to it. So you're going to have that average pace on your watch, that on your watch screen. So you'll be able to kind of pay attention to that after you get through the first section. So you are going to have to kind of change your plan now that you can't kind of just go with the group. And it is a bummer because imagine just following the pace group and not having to look down at your watch every so often. So yeah, you are going to definitely have to adjust your strategy in that way as well.
I would, closing thought for me, New York starts, actually the steepest part of the New York City Marathon is on that bridge to get to go up the bridge and then go down it. And then there's quite a steep downhill to get down off the bridge into Brooklyn. Just think about it as a 5K split. Don't think about it kilometer per kilometer. You're going to drive yourself mad. Just get a ballpark for your first 5 kilometers. And even if you're a touch slow in the first 5K, don't worry about it. I think this is a blessing in disguise for you, Emily. I think you're actually going to run really well because, as Caitlin pointed out, there's something deeply psychological and simplistic about having all these people coming back at you in the second half of the race, and you're able to pick them all off. You're going to be very motivated by that, and you're probably going to run really well in the second half because having to be slowed down a little bit in the first 5K is not a bad idea. Look at our boy Jacob Kiplimo, who won the Chicago Marathon last weekend. That for opening 5K probably cost him the world record, right? Because it was too fast. And the same applies to everybody across the entire spectrum of running. If you go out too hard in the first 5K, you're going to pay for it down the line. It's just the way it works in the marathon. All right. Let us know how you do, Emily. Send us an email in the future. Let us know how you do.
Keep us posted.
Yeah. I'm excited for you. I think you can probably run a personal best in New York if you follow our advice. Okay. Next one. First, I look forward to every episode, and I love watching/listening during a run. Watching during a run, that would be challenging, wouldn't it?
Maybe on a treadmill.
Oh,
maybe watching on a treadmill.
Good one. That's right. There is a mention of a treadmill down the line here. Good catch, Caitlin. I ran a PR this year at Grandma's Marathon, and it was on a hot day. It was hot at Grandma's for sure this year. It's a June race. Ran 3:15. I'm 42 years old, and I have a goal of qualifying for the Boston Marathon before I turn 45 and the time goes up, which, shout out to this listener, viewer, that is a noble goal. He doesn't want to wait till he turns 45 and makes it easier on himself. Wants to qualify now, and then when the time goes up, can qualify then as well. I will likely need something under 3 hours to do so next year, and I have Chicago 2026 in mind if I can get in through the lottery. I'm also registered for the half marathon at Grandma's in June. I know I need a solid base before starting a build next summer, and I'm wondering what you would recommend for weekly mileage or time as this winter, for this winter, and should I still mix in some hills and threshold work in my training during this base phase? Please note that I live in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota, and I prefer to run outside when the temperature is above 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Me too. Mm-hmm. And the roads have some pavement and it isn't covered in snow and ice. I feel your pain. I do have a treadmill in the basement when I need to use it, so cold weather exposure and hazardous conditions can be a factor. Thanks for your help, Paul in Minnesota. Okay, guys, just a quick math here. That's a huge amount of base to build towards that's basically an entire season of base building, right?
Yep.
We're talking from basically now to next. Well, I mean, I guess there's a half marathon on the schedule next June for this guy.
I'd focus on that in the first half of the year for sure.
But then the big goal is a fall marathon where he can run quickly and run under 3 hours. So he's locked in.
Can I make a quick suggestion just right off the top? I think you need to add a spring marathon in there.
I think he does too.
Because you have a time goal, right? Your time goal is to go under 3. You're performance based. You not only need to do a whole lot of months and stack on a lot of mileage you need to test yourself periodically. Periodically. Okay. That's actually a good word. No pun intended. Periodization is a huge part of training. What usually happens to athletes as they improve is that they will have a 12 to 16 week block of training that culminates in a race, then relock, reload, take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on, everyone's kind of different with the time off, but then come back and pick up not from the very start, but from where you left off roughly. That might prevent you from getting stale. And also, running another marathon, say in March or April, might help create another step or benchmark between that 315 and 259 range, because that's a pretty huge range. Like imagine if you train through the winter and you come out in March and run a, I don't know, 308, 309. That's a huge jump, but that's possible, even a 310. Well, then when you turn around, go do that half marathon and then train through the summer and eventually get to that fall marathon, the jump won't feel as steep. So I found that my periods of stagnation as a runner happened for two reasons. One was just injury, and two was a lack of racing. I think of like the pandemic era, I was coming off injuries. It's kind of a couple things at the same time, but I spent a lot of time not racing. And when I finally got back to racing, I'd forgotten how hard that was. Can't really replicate it in a workout. So I don't know, like what you're trying to do is a massive jump. Like it's not going to come easily. It's probably doable, even if your PB was on a hot day. But I think you need to test yourself a few times before getting to that fall to give yourself a better chance.
Yeah, I would say my very first thought was this guy needs to program in something in the spring. I know you've got Grandma's marathon, half marathon in June, and it comes up like pretty quickly in June as well, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going off the top of my head here. So you've got that, but maybe you throw in like a March half marathon. If you don't want to do a marathon in spring, put another half marathon in there, plot it out so you've got a good amount of space between Grandma's and a spring race that's loaded a little earlier in the spring. Or you could focus on slightly faster stuff. I know it's tough to find 5Ks and 10Ks in the dead of winter, but you might be able to program in a couple of 5Ks and a 10K throughout the winter, spring to get your leg speed up. But I would say you want to I think you need to build a season in there. I think you need to build a winter, spring season. I know it sucks. We have the same problem here, Paul, that you've got. Alex and I both in Toronto have a very similar problem. It didn't get quite as cold, I think, as Minnesota. Although I lived in Montreal for many years and faced the exact same scenario. Caitlin, you've got like the opposite same problem where it gets bloody hot and you got to kind of try to avoid the heat, and that compromises your training in a different way. It's doable. The good news is you've got a treadmill. So what I would do with my base build is I would put something on the schedule for so if you're doing June, I would find like an April half marathon or an April marathon even. And I would build towards that starting in December. And I would do a classic build. Like you can do 16 weeks, 14 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever you feel like doing, whatever you're comfortable with. That will help give you structure. It will give you meaning. It will give you purpose in what you're doing, and it will keep you focused, and you'll have a plan in place. You just follow that plan. Easy days, just take them easy. Don't fall on your face when you're out there, but run outside. And then when it's below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, suffer through the treadmill. It's okay. Do the work. So that's why you want to have that plan in place, right? Because you're just like, today I need to run X number of miles. I'm going to do it, and I have to do it on the treadmill, but I'm going to do it because it's in the plan. Set it and forget it. And then I do the workouts in the treadmill if I were you. If it's that cold and that dangerous outside, do the workouts in the treadmill and you'll get good success from that. I would just do a season. You're 42 years old. Not long ago, I was 42 years old. You can still do great things in your early 40s, but you got to do the work. And then you start your build for in the summertime for the fall.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with it because it's a very aggressive goal. And I was kind of trying to figure it out because actually I have the opposite problem in Costa Rica, that it's not that it gets too hot because it pretty much stays the same most of the year. So it's actually negative because we train and race all year, and that's
Right.
also not good.
No.
That's also a negative thing. I'm always thinking like, okay, what's in the next 3 months? What's in the next 3 months? Because there's no off season in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So I don't have, so Paul, you made me sit and really plan it out like I do for my athletes who live all over the world and have winters as well. When I need to think for them, they're not able to get outside and train exactly the same all year long. But I do agree with keeping to a routine and putting something in the early spring. That would be fantastic. And if you don't want to do a marathon, doing something shorter would be fantastic because your goal is very aggressive. It's an amazing goal, but it's an aggressive goal. You need to chop off those 15 minutes to get under 3 hours. And that's going to be challenging and very gratifying and amazing once you get there. So I would say you did ask about specific workouts. And so if you do decide to do something shorter and you have sort of this time before you need to build up for that race, definitely do some speed. And like Michael said, if it's in the winter and you have to do it on a treadmill, no problem. You just kind of like plug in the speed there and you can really let it rip instead of being nervous about being outside. And I would work on that speed because you're going to have to knock off a bunch of seconds off that marathon pace. So how do we do that? We do that by working on things that are even faster, right? Fast paces, VO2 max stuff, and also, and I say it every time, take advantage of getting some strength work in. And it's hard,
sure.
but when you have the winter season, it's the best time to focus on strength as well. Get to the gym, do those heavy lifts for few reps and make sure that you get your strength up there as well. So you're nice and strong, especially if you're going to add in another race that you didn't plan to add in. And this is going to depend on a lot of stuff. It's going to depend, if you feel like you're injury prone, and that's why you didn't want to do the race or you don't have time or something like that. But I think the best thing that you can do is to just keep going with that routine, and schedule that in and don't really take much of a break because I think a lot of people get a little, well, I don't have a race coming up. Actually, me right now, I don't know what I'm running until next July. And this week, a lot of people have been asking me, what's your next race? What's your next race? And for spring of next year, or, February, March, April, and I don't have it yet. And I feel a little lost and I'm training. But I don't really know what that training is for right now. And it makes me feel like I'll be much more motivated once I have that date on the calendar. So once you have that, get that speed work going, have a really great season and yeah. Build up gradually, get the speed work in, get the strength in, you're ready to go.
Yeah. If you're wanting to get sub 3 and you're at 3:15 right now, and for sure, I mean, if it was a hot day, you can kind of do that mental math, which is dangerous because you can talk yourself and I could have been 3:10, but you don't know. But what you do need to do is you do need to create some structure to close that gap between now and next year. And you do need to build more fitness so you can make that jump because that jump won't magically happen in one season probably. So I would even if you don't want to do a marathon, focus on a sub 126 or 120 or a 125 half marathon because that will put you in the ballpark of 3 hours, right? That's the equivalent time, right? So maybe you try 127. So that's like a stepping stone because that puts you in the low 3 hour range. And then you can make that jump to sub 3 in your fall build. All right. Paul,
nice.
Good luck.
Good luck,
Paul. Let us know how it plays out. We've just signed Paul up for another marathon in the
Yes,
spring.
we did.
We're invested in the sub 3 Paul challenge. You got a year to get there, Paul. Let's make it just because try to beat Harry Styles' time as well.
There you go.
2:59:13, I think.
Put that up on the big board. That's some bulletin board material, like in the football teams, like the bulletin board. No one believes in us. The celebrity did this. Beat Harry Styles' time.
Yeah.
There you go. That's
and
a
if
good
the winter gets long, put his face on a dartboard and start just chucking darts as you're running on the treadmill, it'll go by fast.
What did Harry Styles ever
What did he do to us?
He didn't do anything.
It's the vision board. I think you guys are going for the vision
That's right.
board.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a vision board.
Caitlin stays positive.
But I just love throwing darts at things and
Alex.
All right. Take out Harry Styles. He might be running Chicago next year. Actually, you know what? The guy seems like he's into the major marathons. He's done Berlin and Tokyo. He's not done Chicago. Paul, you might be battling it out with Harry Styles. There you go. Not sub 3. Here we go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take one last break, and that'll be it for us as a trio. And we will turn to you, Mr. Sear, as you talk about the future of the marathon. We will be right back.
So far, 2025 has been the best running year of my life. I've had 3 personal bests in the 5K, the 10K, and the half marathon. And I don't think the secret is that complicated. I just haven't been getting injured. I think a big reason for that is that I've started to take my post-run hour much more seriously. So instead of sitting on the couch, eating empty snacks, and watching reruns of The Office, I've been taking Momentous Creatine. So it's become a bit of a habit. I take it after my run. I like their flavorless white creatine powder. It dissolves in a glass of water. Sometimes I put it in a recovery beverage, and I have it after the run. I've never been a huge supplements guy, but with the Momentous Creatine, there's no fear. It's NSF certified. It's used by a bunch of pro athletes, also every NFL team, and even the US military. Now, my goals are probably a little bit different from those of your classic infantry officer. I take it to help my muscles recover so that I'm ready for the next day's run. And bonus, we're also learning that creatine may be fuel for the brain. And so I like to think that it helps me stay sharp for this podcast and ensures that I always have something to respond to Caitlin and her wild facts and Michael and his sarcastic jokes. Right now, Momentous is offering our listeners up to 35% off their first subscription order with promo code Marathon. So go to livemomentous.com and use promo code Marathon for up to 35% off your first subscription order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code Marathon. Back to the show. So, Bill, I had the idea of throwing you massive curveball questions today, but I realized that as a futurist, you probably already knew what was coming, so I thought maybe I wouldn't bother.
Yeah, it's funny being a futurist. A lot of people think that we can predict the future. That's not exactly what we do. We're more about, sort of identifying potential scenarios and how they could play out. So potentially I would have been ready for those curveballs, but I certainly can't predict the future. The way I like to describe it in the context of running is we're a little bit like a running coach, right? I can't predict how you're going to do on race day, but I can help you prepare for multiple scenarios so that you're prepared for that. So what if you get a cramp along the way? What if your fueling strategy isn't going well? What if those scenarios play out, and how are you going to respond? And so that's very similar to the kind of work that we do as a futurist, looking out towards the horizon at everything that's going on in science and technology, as well as economic factors, societal factors, and so on, and helping our clients prepare for the future that's coming.
So just to help me understand what a futurist does on the day-to-day, and then I want to get into the marathoning and running side of it, what are some industries that you've worked with in your time as a futurist?
I mean, across the board, at TCS, we have, a range of clients, everything from, manufacturers, insurance companies, financial services companies, technology companies. I mean, you name it, and we've worked with them, airlines. And everybody is grappling with this, really quickly emerging future that we find, really quickly emerging time that we find ourselves in where the future is changing very rapidly. So, artificial intelligence kind of poured gasoline on that when it came on the scene in 2022. But it's been moving in this direction for several years now, and it's not just artificial intelligence. It's robotics and nanotechnology and lots of other technologies all coming online kind of at the same time. So really, there's no type of company, no industry that's immune from this future, and so we really work across the board with all of them.
So I guess that's why I was kind of curious that you are so interested in marathons, because while marathoning is a quickly growing hobby and sport and passion for a lot of people, you could have put that set of skills anywhere. So what is it about marathons that excites you, and why are you putting time and energy into trying to predict their future?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of a circuitous story. I had always been, so I'm in my mid 50s. I had always been an avid mountain biker and cyclist living, in Golden, Colorado. But had never been much of a runner. I'll do the occasional 10K, run the Boulder, things like that. And 2 years ago, 2023, TCS embarked on a project with Des Linden. As most of your viewers and listeners will know, she's a two-time Olympian, Boston Marathon champion. And we were working with her to create a digital twin of her heart. And so I'll pause here and sort of talk about what a digital twin is.
Yeah, please.
The easiest way to think of it is it's a digital replica of a person, place, or thing. So it could be a digital twin of a heart and eventually of the entire body. It could be a digital twin of, a farm, an agricultural field. It could be a digital twin of a manufacturing line. And the idea is that through sensor technology, you can, identify sort of everything that's going on. We'll use the manufacturing line as an example. Identify everything that's going on with that manufacturing line. Are there parts wearing out that need to be replaced? Is everything running efficiently? But then when you layer artificial intelligence on top of that, you can start to run what if scenarios and identify ways that you can run simulations to identify ways to optimize that manufacturing line. And it's not running tens or hundreds, it's running millions of simulations to figure out what's the best way to optimize that manufacturing line or that agricultural field in terms of where to put water, where to put herbicides, and try and really optimize those outputs. So in the case of Des Linden, we wanted to create a digital twin of her heart as sort of a test bed for, how could this technology be involved in marathons? And so Des, as kind of an aging runner towards the end of her professional career, she was really looking at how can she optimize her training. And so we were looking at ways to run simulations on her heart and see how that could translate into her training program and really optimize that training. So I saw all of that going on in 2023, and I just got really excited about it. And I thought to myself, could just an average guy go out and cobble together commercially available wearable technology to create my own digital twin, and then use artificial intelligence to help me prepare for and train for my first ever marathon. And so that's exactly what I did. I got a training watch, a rest and recovery monitor, a glucose monitor, and I trained for the TCS New York City Marathon in 2023. Excuse me, and ran that marathon, and then the dominoes started falling. Right, you run your first marathon, and that's not enough. So I then ran the TCS London Marathon the following spring, the Chicago Marathon last fall, and then just a couple of months ago, I ran the TCS Sydney Marathon. So it's really been a journey of learning about marathoning and learning about this, sort of emerging world of the future of marathons and where technology can play a role, not just for the runner, but for the marathons as well. How can, marathons be, as I like to say, safer, smarter, more sustainable?
So now I have to ask and look under the cover here. Did you glean anything important or worthwhile about yourself through tech that helped you become a better runner?
I mean, I think for sure it helped me identify, holes in my diet, holes in my rest and recovery. It helped me understand how those things kind of fit together. So I'll give you a great example. We're working currently with a company called Spexa, and they're working to really pull all of this data together. So if you think about the wearables that I mentioned, a training watch, rest and recovery monitor, glucose monitor, they're all kind of silos of data. And so the way I describe them as is not a digital twin, but digital twins, plural. And so it's able to pull all of this data together using artificial intelligence and then really make sense of it, turn data into information. And so one great example, I was on a call with them the other day, and they noted that after my hard training runs, I didn't sleep well that night. And so it's things like that that help you inform, okay, if I, first of all, why is that happening? And then second of all, it's good for me to remember that I'm going to need to allow extra time for recovery after those, big runs as I'm training. So that's just one example of, how all of this information starts to fit together like puzzle pieces. And once you start to layer on artificial intelligence, it can really help you start to make sense of that data. Because I think that's one of the really big challenges is, you buy all this stuff and then you get excited about using it. and then you kind of drown in data, and you're like, I don't know what to make of all this. There's all kinds of, three-letter acronyms that I don't even understand, and so you kind of have to get a minor league medical degree to try and understand it all. And so I think that's where artificial intelligence gets really exciting, is being able to make all of that easy for the average runner to understand, who doesn't have, a coach and all the other things that are, there to interpret that data for the elite athletes.
Man, that makes me excited. And I wonder how far away we are from that, because I see it in my friends and even myself, that everyone seems to have a wearable these days, but not everyone. I'd say the majority of people don't really glean the right data, or even glean the complete picture of what it might tell them. And then they blame it on the wearables. Yeah, this is kind of useless. But it's like, well, maybe, maybe not. You might just not know what to do with all this data. So I'm wondering how far do you think we are from a time where everyone who runs a marathon, not only elite athletes, but everybody who's interested in getting a little bit faster, even that if that's going from 5 hours to 4 hours and 50 minutes, how far are we from having everyone have this type of technology available to them before a race?
Yeah, I think we're not very far away. If you look at, when we think about AI, it's of course been around for decades, right, and been worked on, but it's really only been in the public spotlight since November of 2022. So here we are, not even 3 years later, and we look at all of the advances that they've made in artificial intelligence, and how much better people have gotten at using this technology. And so I think it's a good example to just illustrate how fast this is moving, and how quickly this type of information is going to be able to be put into an AI system to really, again, make sense of that data, give you information instead of giving you data, which is really what you kind of get today. And so I think we're, a handful of years away from being able to do that. And it's really exciting, because I think the more accessible we can make that to runners, the better off we're all going to be. I think we'll all learn how we can, not just be better athletes, better marathoners, but also just improve our overall health and wellness, right? So somebody who's not even necessarily interested in marathoning, just wants to improve their overall health, I think it's a really good tool for them as well.
I wonder what are some of the other things that runners will see change in, say, their current lifetime, in the next, however you want to categorize it, 10, 20, 30 years, about marathons and how they're going to be different. Because, the way I see it, there are going to be changes in the spectator experience and also in the organization part. And I want to get to those parts as well. But for now, maybe let's stick with the runner's experience. What else stands to change in the upcoming years?
Yeah. So I think we're going to have more technology. So there's going to be more technology available to us, and as things like nanotechnology become available, where instead of this technology being on our body, it's going to go in our body, which kind of sounds crazy to think about. But once we start to get to that point, and who knows if that's going to be 10, 20, 30 years down the road, right? There's a lot of things from regulatory perspective and so on that need to happen for that to become a reality. But we're going to start to get much more granular information about our training, about how we're performing, about having very, very personalized training plans for each individual. So I think that's one area that's going to be really transformative. I think also just the wearable technology is going to get more and more sophisticated. We've already seen a lot of that in the last few years. It was just a few years ago that training watches were pretty basic, and now it's remarkable, all the things that they can measure, your heart rate variable, your, VO2 max, like all of these things are starting to become available to us. The other area that I think is going to be really interesting is clothing. So one of the things that was really surprising to me when I showed up to my first marathon is they were like, go to Goodwill, buy a sweatshirt and a pair of pants that you can wear to the start line, and then you're going to throw them in a bin.
This is, by the way, the advice that I think we have given on this podcast. So please debunk us now.
So I was like, okay, well, that's a lot of clothing that just goes in a bin. Now it's good that it gets handed out probably to people in need, But they're working on technology currently that through 4D and 5D printing allows materials to morph. And so when it senses that it's cold out, it can morph to keep you warm. And then it becomes light and airy as you get into the race and you start running. If a rainstorm comes in, it can sense that and become hydrophobic. And so this clothing is going to be really sophisticated, and you show up with the clothing that you need, and it'll keep you warm when you need to be warm, and it'll make you cool when you get into the race and need to cool down. So just another example of how it's not just about sort of understanding our bodies and how we're training and how we're performing on race day, but also the things that are going on around us. And we're seeing lots of advancements in shoes, of course, super shoes, that type of thing. But I think we'll also start to see technology go into shoes that helps us better understand, our gait, and are we sort of doing something with our stride that's, causing injuries, inhibiting our performance. So instead of it being super shoes, they'll be smart shoes, right? Where they also start to be a connected device and give you a lot of that feedback that I think would be really helpful for those of us who aren't, just those beautiful, graceful runners. Like I look at these runners and I'm like, gosh, they just run so well. They're so beautiful. I'm not that guy. I wish I was, but I'm not. So being able to have that kind of input to improve my stride, I think would be really exciting.
And there are some patents out there already, one by Nike that we haven't seen it come to fruition just yet, but there's something in the works in the way of a midsole changing in real time based on your foot strike. So this stuff is coming, and I'm excited to see what ends up happening in terms of performance.
Yeah.
What about it? What about inside the race? So I was listening to you on a few podcasts, and you mentioned the idea of AI assigning your race corral eventually. And that got me thinking, my God, could that fix certain problems and pain points around people waiting a really long time, maybe before a race, perhaps people being in the wrong corral? Also, the idea of influencers being potentially in corrals where they were gifted a spot, but maybe it might not be the right corral for them. How would that work? Is that a realistic thing to have basically a technology looking at your perhaps recent races and workouts and then assigning a corral for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those, there's a couple of ways that I think about this. The first one is being able to look at that very, near time data, right? So the data that's coming off of your training data leading up to the race and saying, hey, I knew you thought you were going to be running at this pace, but you're actually, more likely to be running at this other pace, whether that's faster or slower, right? Because it's not about just pushing you back further into the corrals. It's about optimizing where everybody is so that they're running at the correct pace. And so being able to take that data and make pretty real-time decisions about where you need to be, I think could really help smooth out, particularly those early miles in the race where you're kind of bobbing and weaving around everybody trying to find your pace and your cadence that's more consistent with what everybody else is doing. The other thing that I like artificial intelligence for is so there was this technology called AlphaGo, and it was designed to play the game of Go, right? A game that's been around for thousands of years, particularly in China and the East. And so they developed this AlphaGo game, and it was playing against the very best Go players in the world. And there's a move called Move 32. And during this match, the AI made a move that nobody had ever seen before, right? And that was Move 32 that ultimately ended up helping the AI win. And it just kind of shocked the Go world that over thousands of years nobody had come up with this move. And so it's a good illustration of how artificial intelligence can help us reimagine things in a way that we might not have thought of before. So it's not just about optimizing start corrals, but it's also letting artificial intelligence reimagine what the start line is, right? Maybe start corrals in the way that we think of them today are not the optimal way to get everybody started. I don't know what the other way is, but but I think that it's possible that AI could help us start to reimagine that and make it much more efficient. And then also, one of the things that would do is allow us to safely put more runners on the course. So you take these really hard to get into races, New York, Chicago, right? All the ones that everybody knows about that, you apply for and hope that you get the magic ticket, but you may not. Being able to have more people get to participate in those races could be really exciting.
That was going to be my next question, because from where I'm standing, this is one of the greatest pain points in the world of major marathons. It's that not everyone can participate. And I mean, I get that there are qualification standards. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, people who are marathoners, dyed-in-the-wool runners who've done it for many years and who've gotten their times down to a place where they want to challenge themselves in London and Sydney and Berlin and just can't get in. I think a recent stat that came out of London was that if you're relying on the lottery, you have something like a 1 in 20 chance at getting in, which is so hard. So do you think that eventually that number, because I think now races are beating records, right? 50,000 plus runners on the start line. I think New York had the record, and then a few months later, London got the record, and it just kind of keeps going up. Do you think we can dramatically increase the number of runners who are able to run these races, or do we have to eventually resort to, and I think this kind of is already happening, just increasing the roster, making the roster of major races bigger? Like, I wonder what comes first.
Yeah, and I think it'll be both, right? So I'll sort of take the second part of it first, which is, do we increase the roster? And I think the challenge with that is that as soon as you open up or make another race a world major, it's just going to fill up, right? Like, you look at the numbers in Sydney, and as soon as it became a world major, everybody started flocking. And there's talk of maybe South Africa being the next one. That's likely to happen there too, because people just want to be in these big, exciting races where the most elite runners are showing up. So that doesn't necessarily, I think, provide a relief valve for the problem that you described. But I do think that these technologies could allow us to put more people on the course and do it safely. And it's not just about the start corrals, right? It's also technology to make sure that aid stations are staffed properly. It's being able to monitor. So one of the things that we've sort of talked about is having wearable bio twins, that each runner, you get your bib and you get a little patch that goes on your arm, and then the race safety team can be monitoring all of the racers, obviously using artificial intelligence. And if they spot that a runner is starting to have serious problems, not just the typical bonking like we all have experienced, but real serious problems, start moving resources to that person, right, to be able to deal with them very quickly. So technologies like that, because it's not just about putting more people on the course, it's about being able to make sure that it's safe when we do so, and then having enough volunteers to be able to support all those racers. So using things like robotics and drone technology to be able to move resources around the course, to be able to refuel aid stations and water stations and so on. Being able to clean up after races using waste sorting robots, that type of thing. So a lot of things go into that, but I think there's a real opportunity for us to be able to kind of continue to expand this sport that we all want to participate in as much as we're able to.
So no more dropping out at 27K and having no idea where your friends are and taking an Uber to the finish line, which is something I've heard of happen a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder where, so you've gotten me in one of my big points of interest, and that is where races will take place in the following years, because as we've added one major to the roster of 6, and now we have 7, I've come to wonder where might the next ones be. And we talk about this on our podcast all the time. Probably a couple things will factor. One is, how probably just trying to put a marathon in a place where there are no major marathons, just to create a bit of disparity across the world. And also, there's the whole thing about weather. You wonder, this year, Berlin, for example, was very hot, and it's a marathon that's known to be really fast. It's hard to have a marathon that's fast when the weather is really hot. I wonder if there are cities in the world that you think might be good candidates for hosting major marathons in 10, 20, 30 years. You mentioned South Africa already, but I'm also curious about other places.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I suppose flat, low in elevation, and cool are probably the three big categories, right, that everybody would like to see. Um, but that's challenging and increasingly challenging, right? Berlin is not the only one that's seen a really hot race. I think it was 2 years ago in Tokyo. It was a super hot race, and they actually started running out of water at the water stations because they weren't anticipating that, people would be the faster racers would be grabbing a cup to drink and a cup to pour over their head to try and stay cool. And so um, I think the challenge is going to be how do we, have these races in a world that appears to be increasingly getting, warmer and warmer and do that in a safe way. And so one of the things that I think about is, okay, how can we use technology to help deal with that? So, I mentioned the clothing that allows you to, stay cool when it senses that it's getting warm out. That might be a good option to be able to go into places that normally might have been too warm or too risky for us to put a marathon in because of the warm weather, but we can run them safely because people have access to that kind of technology. Also having one of the other things that we've talked about here at TCS is just this idea of a drone-based logistics network. So, using the example of Tokyo, um, being able to identify quickly that certain water stations were running out of water, have drone technology be able to quickly deliver water to those stations, so that when it is a lot hotter than we expected, like in Tokyo, like in Berlin last year, it doesn't become a problem for us. We're able to deal with it very very effectively as race organizers. So I think it's going to be a couple of things coming together. One is, where does it make sense for us to have these events? And then the other one is how can technology help to make those events successful?
Wait, can you put me on the list for one of those morphing shirts or jackets? I think that would just be useful in everyday life.
Totally, I know. I'm the same way. Yeah, no, we'll get you on the list for that one.
So before going to the spectator experience and also a bit of organization, because spectator experience, as far as I'm concerned, is almost more important than runner experience. Because if you're a fan of running, you're more often a spectator than you are a runner. You can only run so many marathons over the years. But before then, I want to challenge you a bit on the questions of AI going into racing, because as a futurist, I'm sure that a big part of your job is also to predict what might go wrong with putting a whole lot of new tech. So I would just want to ask you about that first. Like, are there pitfalls that you are actively working towards trying to avoid? I have a few ideas of how having like a lot of new technology might change running, but I'm curious if there are certain problems that are front of mind for you that you're trying to make sure don't happen.
Yeah. So one of the big ones that I think about is the problem of the haves and the have-nots, right? So do we end up in a world where only people of a certain socioeconomic, level are able to afford these technologies, and therefore they end up with kind of a leg up on everybody else because they can access the latest and greatest technology. And it doesn't just give them an incremental improvement like maybe super shoes do today, but it gives them a massive improvement, and it makes the sport more accessible to people who have more money. And so then it kind of becomes this sport. It's like, well, that's for the rich guys. I don't really want to partake in that, right? So that's definitely one area that I think a lot about is how do we make sure that as this technology comes out, it's accessible to as many people as possible, so that we don't, cause people to really just want to turn away from it because they think it's a sport for the elites. The other thing that I think a lot about is data privacy, right? So I talked about, all of this data coming off of your body from wearable technology, maybe one day all of that data going into your body, or excuse me, the nanobots going into your body. And so now we have even more data about you. That's a lot of data about you, that's pretty private, pretty personal. So how do we make sure that we secure that information and make sure that it doesn't, get into the wrong hands, get used against us? Maybe an insurance provider would love to get their hands on that information so that they can use it to set your premiums, things like that. I think that's another area where this technology could kind of go wrong for us.
And I'm guessing like what might be the solution for something like that? Have all these advances be optional for runners?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's definitely making it optional is going to be critical. I think everybody needs to this needs to be an opt-in technology, not an opt-out technology, right? Where we say we're going to collect your data unless you opt out. I don't think that's a good solution. So I think it's that, and then I also think it's as these technologies, like all technologies, right? At the very beginning, they're not very scalable, not very available, and so they're very expensive. And as they become better and more people use them, the cost of the technology drops, right? And you can look across pretty much any technology that we've had, not just sort of digital technology, but technology in general. And that's really been the case that the price of that those kinds of devices and technologies drops over time. And so hopefully that will continue to be the case here. And with something like artificial intelligence, we'll really accelerate that because it's not an infrastructural thing that needs to get put into place. It's sort of digital and available, and so hopefully it'll be available to a lot of people really quickly.
You saw that in super shoes, oddly enough. Not saying that the price has gone down by so much, if at all, really. Maybe we're not there yet, but we've at least seen it go from the feet of a few elite athletes to basically everyone. So that does happen over just a few years in the running world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great example, right? It was almost the price wasn't even the point. It was that you have to be one of our elite runners to even put your feet in these shoes, right? And so yeah, I think it's a good example of how this technology can sort of begin to make its way into the average runners like myself.
Do you expect this tech to scale across many races? Because we talk haves and have nots on the individual level, which when new tech rolls out, there will be a stage of this happening, I suppose. But on a race level, do you think we'll get to a place where all of these advances make a few select races in the world absolutely must do's, and then maybe your second and third tier races just feel kind of average in comparison? Or do you think once this tech is figured out, we can maybe scale it and have it at many, I mean, not saying like your local turkey trot necessarily, like there are gradations of races and it'll always be that way. But do you think once we figure it out, we'll be able to get it not just to the few select majors in the world, but also maybe second or third rate races? And by that, I mean the scope of money invested in these races.
Yeah, I hope that that's the case, and I think it's logical that could be the case, right? That these technologies would be available to probably the most elite races to start with. But I know that those big races, I've talked to race directors, at New York and Boston and Chicago, and it's really something that they think about, right? Like how do we create a situation where all boats rise with the tide? And so I think they're really invested in helping to make sure that those smaller races are successful as well. And so I think it's something that they'll be thinking about. So rather than saying I want to hoard this technology and make sure that only the elite races or the biggest races have access to this, I think they're really going to be interested in making sure that it's accessible to as many other races as possible, which I think is really important because they then have influence on these technology companies to say, hey, you know, I get that, as the, New York City Marathon, I get to have access to this. That's not good enough for me. I want to make sure that these other races have access to it as well. So being able to use the influence that they have, I think is going to be really useful in that regard.
Let's talk spectators. I want to know more about the spectator experience. I've already seen a change since starting to run, and this is a nod to your lot TCS because their app is amazing. Every time there's a TCS race happening, I'm excited if I'm spectating because I'll know I'll be able to track the runners that I want to track all in real time. That part's really nice. What are the next advances and technologies that a spectator might be able to expect when it comes to big marathons?
Yeah. So as you know, the big challenge with marathons is, that they're happening on city streets and they're not in a stadium like, a football game or a baseball game or something like that. And so, you know, uh, people come and they go and then that's it. And so I think there's a couple of challenges. One is, we've made at TCS big strides in helping people, find their loved ones as they run by and cheer them on. But there's still variability in that. I was at a race at the Sydney, Australia, TCS Sydney, Australia Marathon a few weeks ago, and my wife and I just kind of missed each other at one point, right? Like I kind of knew where she was, and she kind of knew where I was, but she was on the other side of the street, right? So we missed each other. And so being able to have technology that allows us to identify somebody as they're approaching, right? So there might be a sensor in your bib or on your watch, and then using augmented reality glasses, that person can, see you sort of highlighted through the crowd and make sure that they identify you. And then being able to also use those augmented reality glasses to see how you're doing throughout the race. So it's not just see you approach and see you leave. It's being able to see not just where you are on the course, but how you're doing. How's your pacing? How's your heart rate? How are you feeling? Can I send that person a message to their augmented reality glasses so that they can see me cheering them on? So I think that's one big area where the race experience can really be improved, and also to be able to continue to track the elite runners. So as they run by, being able to continue to track them as they're going on in the race before the amateur runners start coming through. The spectators can see how they're doing and really be a lot more involved in not just the moment that they pass by, but how they're doing throughout the race and at the finish at the finish line. So that's one area that I'm really excited about. Now, the problem with with AR and VR glasses is they've sort of had this moment where VR is going to be a thing, and then it falls off. Facebook changed its name to Meta because it was going to be all about the metaverse and VR and all that. And it sort of has had these, waves of promise and then dropping off. But just in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of advancements in that technology. Meta in particular has been leaning into it, but there's other companies as well. And so I think that's something that's going to become a lot more of a reality, sooner than later.
I remember doing a story 3 years ago about this group of people who had sold their real estate portfolio in real life in order to buy some real estate in the metaverse. I really should reach out to them. I wonder how they're doing right now.
I'll bet they'd really like to have that physical real estate back.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So,
That is a cool idea though, of being in the crowd and being able to see your runner go through the course. Could they look like anything? Could they look like a Power Ranger if you wanted?
I think probably so. Yeah, that's what I
My
would
God.
want to be. I think Power Ranger.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool experience and good way to keep in track. And also this is the issue that I have when I'm watching a marathon. It's that I'll have friends racing. I will have faster friends racing, and then I love the elite race. So and then I follow the men's and then the women. So basically I'm tracking like 8 races at once, and that's very hard. And to have something that helps me do that beyond a live stream that will invariably follow, the top man and the top woman would be really nice.
Yeah, exactly. And then another sort of area in the spectator experience is, you know, maybe there's an opportunity for you based on the course setup where you could meet somebody in 2 or 3 different places, but it's hard to know what's the best place for me to go. Once I see them here based on their pace, am I going to have enough time to get from A to B and see them again, and then, so on. And TCS has been working with a company called Run Concierge, which is a marathon specific AI chatbot to help you prepare for race day. And so it's similar to a conversation that you would have with ChatGPT or Gemini or any of the rest of them. But rather than a large language model, which is what those are, they like to describe it as a small language model. And so it's very focused on that specific race and that specific city. And then you can have a conversation with it to, identify where are the best places for me to get if I'm a spectator, where should I go, to see my racer first, and then where should I go from there? And, maybe I want to get a coffee along the way. What's the best coffee shop within 2 blocks of this, this particular location? And I was actually able to use it in Sydney because, being from Colorado, we're not a big public transport city. And so I'm always nervous about taking public transport on race day. And so I was thinking, should I just take an Uber to the start line instead of getting on the train? and I was able to get into Run Concierge and start a conversation, and it said, "Do not do that. It will not end
Oh,
well. All the bridges are shut down, and you've got to get across the bay." And so, but it pointed me to from my hotel. There was a train station 2 blocks away. It directed me how to get there. It told me what train to get on, and it was super seamless and really easy. And so, it's another great way for marathons to be able to really improve not just the race day experience for the runners, but also spectators as well, to give them access to this chatbot that is just for that race and the city that race is happening in.
that's cool. So I was in Chicago on Thursday, Friday. Long story short, I had to come back to my home in Toronto for a wedding. And so I watched the race digitally and not physically. But there's something that happens every time you step into a city for its marathon weekend for the first time. And for me, that was my first time in Toronto on marathon, or in Chicago for marathon weekend. And it's that you realize that you don't really know the city. You have an idea of what happens, but you don't know how to get around. And what I also realized, because I wasn't actually there for the race, but for the days prior, is that a marathon, as a spectator or a runner, is not a 2 to 5 hour experience. It's a week. It's a weekend. In Boston, it's a week now. We do media there. So we'll show up probably 4 or 5 days before the marathon and stay for the day after because there's so much going on. And I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be nice for this Run Concierge technology to eventually not only direct you during the race, but to direct you as a spectator or anticipating runner throughout the days that you're there? Like now, Chicago had 28 different shakeout runs this time around. And as someone who wants to participate in the week, you have to choose which one you prefer to do. Then there are all the pop-ups. And then, well, which restaurants do I want to hit up while I'm here? There's so many decisions. And I feel like right now, most people leave the city without feeling like they've seen it all or maybe chose the experience that's right for them. Do you think eventually this Run Concierge could open up to not only racers on the day, but to people who want to experience Chicago or whatever city that they're in for a number of days and want to have a unique experience there based on what they like?
Yeah, it's a really great idea, and I love the way that you described that. I was actually laughing because I was listening to you guys' podcast leading up to Chicago, and you were talking about, we're going to do a shakeout run, but we're one of 50 other shakeout runs, so you got to pick and choose wisely. And I think it's a great example of, or a great idea, that they could make this almost your itinerary builder, right? So it's not just on race day, but it's what things do I maybe want to go see while I'm there? Because it is fun to sort of turn it into a little bit of a vacation as well and see some things, but you also don't want to put in 20,000 steps the day before the marathon. So what are some things that you could do to go see the city, but not put in a bunch of steps? Where are there shakeout runs? And what are the kinds of shakeout runs that I want to be involved in? And so really kind of helping you build that week-long itinerary, I think is a great idea, and it would be perfectly suited for that. And be able to connect into all of those different pieces that go beyond just the day of the race. That's a great idea. I'll
Yeah,
pass that along.
when you pitch it, you can give me credit. I take Venmo. I'll take 25%. Up to you.
I'll
Just
definitely let them know.
yeah, please. Uh, so, Bill, I want to ask you a series of maybe more rapid fire questions, if that's okay with you,
All right, let's do it.
and then I'll let you on to your day. But based on everything we talked about, or maybe if there's something that we haven't touched on, what's the one thing that excites you the most about, call it, the marathon of the future?
I think the thing that excites me the most personally is being able to turn data into information that I talked about earlier, because that's really overwhelming for me. I think what sort of zooming out a little bit, what excites me about it is being able to make marathons more accessible to more people. Because now that I've had the opportunity really pretty late in my, in my athletic life to get involved in it, I realized how awesome it is and what a fun sport it is. And if we can get more people involved, earlier on in their lives, ideally, I think that's really exciting.
How many major marathons, call them world majors, will exist in 2050?
12.
12. Do you want to share the
Uh,
cities?
no, I I don't know. It just seemed like a good number. Although that's only what, 25 years from now? Maybe it's more like 10. Um, I don't know. As I like to say, as I said earlier, we don't predict the future, we rehearse the future. So the short answer is I really don't know. But I do think there's probably an appetite to get, one or two more in relatively short order, and then who knows where it'll go from there.
What's the biggest problem with marathons of the present?
I think it's the amount of waste that gets produced during a marathon. Yeah, I think it's and something that we didn't talk about was these circular hydration pods. That would be available. I'm getting away from your rapid fire, so cut me off
That's
here.
that's okay.
But one of the technologies that is, has been developed, and so now it's a matter of just being able to scale this out, are these circular hydration pods. So they're effectively, think about like a water pearl, and you could pick it up and either, bite it to pierce the sort of, think of it almost like a little water balloon. You bite it, pierce it, and then suck the water out and throw it on the ground, and it just biodegrades. Or you could even consume it. It's not going to hurt you. Actually, as I was running Sydney, I was like, it would be really cool is if the outside of it was your energy gel. So you're taking in the water and the carbohydrates all at the same time. Um, so that's a good example of how we could start to eliminate a lot of the waste. But one of the things that I'm always just like shocked about whenever I run a race is how many, cups and bottles and gel packets and everything end up on the ground and then downstream in a landfill. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges today.
Wow, so a little sphere with water inside and your energy gel wrapped around. Cool. That's another good idea that you and I came up with together.
Yeah,
Sweet. Um,
I think we have like five different startups we can get going on after this call.
yeah, we'll stay on the call after we record. We can, are you free this afternoon? We can chat.
Yeah, we'll get it going.
What's a running event that you really want to do that you haven't done yet?
Boston. Yeah,
Boston.
the Boston Marathon. I will never be old enough to be fast enough to where those lines cross, so it's probably not in the cards for me. But it's just such an iconic race, and just to me would be kind of the top of the heap. Just a really cool experience.
I've been to Boston for the marathon weekend. I've never run it, but I can tell you that, and you might have been there for the weekend as well. There's nothing quite like Boston. I think it's the size of it. The city just really comes alive and shuts down. And it seems that everybody in the city has one focus on that weekend, which is hard to pull off in larger cities, but
Yeah,
yep, it's dynamic.
yeah.
What's the most advanced marathon in the world right now, in your opinion, and why?
The most advanced. Well, I haven't been to them all, so it's a little hard for me to say. But I do think that probably New York is seems to be really interested in ways that they can, pull in new technologies and make them available. So, maybe New York, with the caveat that I really haven't, gotten to go to all of them. So it's a little bit of a limited data set for me.
We're going to New York in a few weeks and we're pretty excited. It's the first time that we have our full team there and we're already filling our schedule with things that are happening. So I'm curious to see what happens. That's also for different reasons an incredible race weekend by just the sheer size of it. So we're
Yeah,
we're
for
looking forward
sure.
to it.
I'm going to be there as well, so we should connect while we're there
Well, we got a lot to talk about, Bill. So there's a lot of startup ideas.
for sure.
And what about yourself? What's your next race? Let's talk near future. What's your next
Yeah.
race?
So the next race is, I think I'm going to try and do Paris next spring, the TCS Paris Marathon, which happens in April. So I think that's the next one on my list.
Cool.
Yeah.
And far future, are people still running marathons in 250 years?
I think they are. And I think the reason that they are is because, in spite of all the technology, all the things that we've talked about, it still is a human experience. And it's still the experience of doing something really hard and preparing your body to do something really hard over weeks and months. And I think that's just part of the human condition that people want to be able to do that. And so It's why I think people will still be running in 250 years, and why I think while all of this technology is going to make running more accessible to more people, hopefully, at the end of the day, it's still you lacing up your shoes and putting in 26.2 miles.
I heard you say this on another podcast, and I'm going to quote you because I just thought it was brilliant, that the tech advances that don't seem to appeal to people are the tech advances. I'm paraphrasing here. You said it much more succinctly, but are the tech advances that just make running easier for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think it just, it kind of takes away from, it takes away from why we're doing this in the first place, right? Which is to show ourselves that we can do hard things and to really push our boundaries.
With the exception of my super shoes, which I love. But generally, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And final question before I let you go. We're recording this on today's October 13th, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're right in the heart of the Baseball World Series. I don't bet on sports, but given that I have a futurist here, let's see what we can do. Who's going to win the World Series?
Well, coming from Colorado as a Rockies fan, I can tell you who's not going to win the World Series. Probably in the next 250 years. Yeah, no idea. No idea who's going to win that one. Sorry.
So we'll have to stand by. And as a Torontonian, I'm perhaps a bit more optimistic about this year's outcome.
Well, hopefully that'd be definitely a fun time if they were able to pull it off.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us, Bill, and hopefully we'll see you in New York.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. Thanks, Alex.